Looking back on a majority of the upgrades I've made to my PC hardware, I can't help but note how often I find myself upgrading on a whim. More often than not, right after telling my friends how happy I was with my hardware at the time. I've never been the type of person to rush out to stores or spam F5 every time a new shiny piece of tech hits the market. The original Xbox One was the first console I bought with my own money, and I held on to it like a fat baby holds on to candy. I saw the mid-generation releases, and I saw promises of better frame rates and higher resolutions, but to me, the fact that I could play a game that looked like this on a $300 console was more than enough to keep my primitive gamer brain engaged. Things like low refresh rates or adaptive resolutions meant nothing to me. I was just happy to have a console and TV to myself in my room. Time passed, I went off to college, and it was there that I experienced something that I hadn't encountered since my older brother sat down with me on Saturday mornings and we flipped a coin over whether we'd play Battlefront or Need for Speed. I found myself living with other people who enjoyed playing games, and through them I was introduced to titles and consoles that I'd previously only seen in passing YouTube videos. On a slow day, I would find myself going into a friend's room to watch him play Horizon Zero Dawn on his PS4. Between classes, I would fit in a game or two of Smash 4 in the common room, and looking back now, it's a miracle I passed my Gen Ed classes in spite of the hundreds of hours we poured into Overwatch. Back then, multiplayer was the name of the game, and I rarely found myself loading up a single-player title. It wasn't until 2 disappointing next-gen remasters came out that I started to notice the drawbacks of consoles. Dishonored and Skyrim's respective ports to the Xbox One were major disappointments. I didn't care about the marginal increase in foliage, nor did the slight bump in texture resolution warrant buying the same game twice. Still, I likely wouldn't have delved into the PC Master Race if it wasn't for my roommate's proposal of splitting the cost of a PC. Being the madman he was, he had purchased an Oculus Rift before building a PC, so his half of the interest in building our PC was paramount. At the time, I was still unsure of whether or not the cost of the PC was warranted just to invest in what would likely be a passing fad. How could I have known back then that a friend's impulse purchase would shape the way I look at technology today, and introduce me to the only thing that's truly brought me joy this last year? Looking back, I'm not sure if I would have ever gotten into the PC market, nor purchased the various upgrades I've acquired over the last 4 years without that initial dive. The PC sitting next to me is essentially an entirely new device. There isn't a single component from that original build in the chassis, but in my mind, it's still the PC I built on the carpet of my sophomore dorm room, terrified of building up static electricity with every movement, applying a fraction of the force needed to install our RAM out of fear of breaking the sticks. I still get a little nervous reapplying the thermal paste or unplugging the notorious 24-pin cable, but I find myself intimately invested in the hardware and software of my PC despite my past indifference towards my consoles. I don't think it would be inappropriate to claim that my plunge into the PC ecosystem was a fluke, but I'm glad I listened to my roommate's pitch. Of course, that first massive upgrade was only the tip of the iceberg. I was introduced to a lot of foreign concepts in a short amount of time. Things like tweaking game settings to get the perfect balance of performance and visuals, understanding the necessary compromises needed to run things like VR on lower-end hardware, and the benefits of higher frame rates. The first upgrade that I invested in completely on my own volition was a 1080p 144Hz monitor. I still think out of all my upgrades, the change from 60Hz to 144Hz was the most impactful. And again, acquiring that upgrade almost never happened, and I might have remained in blissful 60Hz ignorance if it wasn't for a rogue Craigslist ad that seemed too good to be true. After the upgrade to a higher refresh rate, upgrading my PC's internals wasn't far behind. A new CPU, GPU, and RAM all found their way into the case. And before I knew it, I had bought off my roommate's half of the PC and officially made it my own. Eventually, I was given an Oculus Rift of my own, arguably my favorite Christmas present to date, and the rest is history. I can attribute my love for VR and, at a wider extent, my love for PCs to that one pitch half a decade ago. So here's the question. At what point do you need to upgrade? Thanks to everyone being stuck at home for the last year or so, plenty of people want to upgrade or take the initial plunge into the world of personal computers. I pity anyone trying to find a GPU at a decent price right now, and I wake up every morning terrified that my GPU will fail. Those fears aside, I think it should be noted that I've upgraded my hardware and peripherals way beyond what is necessary for an enjoyable gaming experience, and that my impulse purchases in the last year might not be the best example for people looking to join the PC master race. In the last few years, the only upgrades I've made out of justified necessity have been acquiring my GTX 1070 and a Ryzen 5 3600, and those purchases were only necessary due to my love of VR. If I was only gaming on a flat screen, I could have made my old Ryzen 5 1600 last for quite a while longer. I see more and more games recommending a GTX 1070 for optimal settings, and lists the GTX 970, my original card, in the minimum specs list, so that upgrade also flies under the radar. For a solid 2 years, my PC enjoyed a perfectly balanced configuration. The 1070 and 3600 went together like car batteries in the ocean, and my rig was able to handle most VR games at high to medium settings with smooth frame rates. So, obviously, I had to go and fuck all of that up by buying an RTX 3070. Long story short, thanks to a friend's foresight, I found myself rocking a card that supplies horsepower way beyond what I need. The lower resolution and refresh rate of the original Oculus Rift doesn't require much to get it up and running smoothly. So, the 3070 was a bit overkill. Even before upgrading my GPU, I was debating upgrading to a better headset. For the longest time, the Valve Index has been tugging at the back of my mind, and I've had to convince myself to wait for a better and more affordable headset to hit the market. Unfortunately, after this recent ViveCon, something tells me that I have a little longer to wait. So what did I do with an overkill GPU and a VR headset I felt wasn't utilizing all of my newfound horsepower? I went and bought a better monitor, of course. Yeah, sometimes even I can't follow my train of thought, but hear me out. A new VR headset, especially one with the specs that I feel would utilize my rig, would cost me upwards of $600, and for the longest time, my dream VR upgrade would cost $1,000, more than it cost me to build my entire PC back in the day. So, for the time being, it makes sense to invest in the second best utilization of my GPU, and hopefully make future videos a little easier on the eyes. If you've kept up with my recent uploads, you know that well, there aren't any. Part of the reason I haven't uploaded a video in a while is due to the fact that I've been playing more flat screen games. I have to break my new monitor in somehow. An unforeseen consequence of this break from VR and making videos, besides losing the last grasp on the algorithm my poor channel might have been holding on to, has been learning a lesson or two regarding upgrades. Yes, 1440p looks great, and it feels wonderful actually utilizing the horsepower the RTX 3070 provides, but getting a new monitor has shown me that I don't need a new VR headset. Yet. Yeah, the Oculus Rift is a little lacking in the resolution department, but besides that one drawback, what need is there for me to upgrade? The Oculus Touch controllers are unmatched. 90Hz is perfectly passable for VR, and outside-in tracking has yet to be fully matched by inside-out solutions. Sure, seeing a clearer world around me would be more immersive in VR than looking at a pancake screen, but if games like Half-Life Alyx, Skyrim VR, or Zero Caliber VR have taught me anything, it's that the denser the detail in an environment, the less the screen door effect matters. If the point of this video seems a bit aimless, thanks for sticking with it and me anyways. These last few weeks have been strange, from having to scrap a video because half of the clips I thought I had for the game I wanted to cover were actually recordings of my second monitor, to getting a sunburn on my face that was bad enough to keep me out of my headset for over a week. I've been slacking in the video department. All I can do now is thank those of you who have made it to this point in the video and promise that more videos are in the works. Oh, and I guess I can answer some more questions from my Discord. Do you play the banjo? Will you marry me?
Hell no, to the no, 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 hell to the no.